We are live. Be Better, episode 46. This episode, we're going to interview our awesome RD, Niki. Niki Thomson's been with us for over a year now. She was referred to us by one of our old RDs, Gerald, who took a different job. She has been doing the challenges. She has been doing consultations. She's been really everything when it comes to nutrition. She's been running it for our company. So if you have any nutrition questions, you can message her after the show, message us. We can get you in contact with her. She's going to hop on here any minute, as well as my partner in crime, Jacob.w.ross. You want to see which mic's hot, buddy? Want to see which mic's hot?
Hello.
One of them. There we go. Had a little technical difficulties. The cameras weren't working at all for like 10 minutes.
Oh.
So we're a little behind and then waiting on Niki to join.
Well, now we're good to go.
Yeah. Jacob, camera's good.
I came in right on time.
Yeah, 10 minutes late, right on time. 10 minutes late because I was 10 minutes late. Pissed me off, this thing. And I got my buddy coming in like 25 minutes. So, because we're doing back-to-back podcasts tonight. One with Niki and then one with my buddy Dave and Finn with Let's Get Stupid. So hopefully Niki joins us. We've been, me and Jacob have been swamped lately. We're not going to get too much into it because I wanted the show to be about nutrition and focus on Niki a little bit. But for those who follow us on Instagram, you'll know that we are in the process of opening a gym and dealing with all the problems with opening a gym, I guess. Well, Niki just hopped on, so we're going to bring her to the studio. Niki, how's it going?
Everyone. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good to finally get a podcast. And it took us three times to get it in.
No worries. Yeah, we're here.
I gave a brief explanation about you. You've been RD for about, a little over a year. You've handled all of our challenges, all of our anything nutrition, really. You're our go-to girl. We don't mess with it. We go right to you, and you're a lot better in explaining it than we are.
Well, thank you. It's been a great pleasure being part of the team. You guys are absolutely fantastic. I love just even the name itself would Be Better. That's one of the reasons why I got in sports nutrition is I feel like sports nutrition pushes people beyond just a standard baseline. We want to go above that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what kind of we're all about, going above that. So how did you get interested in nutrition? Was it just a thing for you in the beginning? Did you start something else in college, then transition?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was originally a psychology major. Psychology is something I'm still very passionate about. However, at the time, I had some difficulties with finding that balance of not trying to take on everyone's emotions and responsibilities. That I found that nutrition and sports nutrition would be a good fit too, where I can still help people get to their best potential. That's the thing that I care one of the most about is helping people self-actualize, which is according to Maslow, he's a famous psychologist. He believes that one of the important things is to self-actualize, which is to become the best potential of yourself. But there's all of these different levels that you have to get it secure with. And the very first level is having your physiological needs met, such as food, water, sleep, shelter, and all of that. And so that's one of the big reasons why I started picking nutrition as well as fitness, is because I feel like fitness and nutrition combined can really help with people's health, but also confidence and everything. Our food's also important for our cognitive function. So it still was a great blend of psychology, but also some other aspects too.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was listening to a podcast the other day. I forget this guy's name, real popular guy, and he was talking about like being mentally strong or like physically strong, and he was trying to argue that you should start with physically, like walking, eating right, training, doing something, just moving, getting that momentum in will then mentally make you feel better instead of trying to like overthink a thinking problem. He did the analogy of that's trying to sniff your way out of a cocaine problem. Like it's just not going to work until you can physically start moving, physically start eating correctly. And that's kind of why we really like you as RD, because you can like take those things that people have issues with maybe their relationships to food, instead of saying like, this is exactly what you need every single day. It's more like, what's the relationship and what's the best diet that you'll actually stick to? Because that's the best diet, right? Not just cut and
Mhm.
dry, copy and paste. It's the one you'll do is the best diet, you know.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Um,
Well, Nikki, hi, I'm here too.
Hello. I didn't know you're here. Hi, Jacob.
Oh, we're fancy over here. We got multiple cameras set up, but no, it's good to actually sit and talk to you. And everyone who's worked with you has said nothing but amazing things, which I'm not surprised about at all. But I just wanted to just quickly kind of make a statement. I was an exercise physiology major,
Mm.
and we dive into nutrition a little bit, obviously not to the level and expertise that you do, but I just feel like kind of being on my side, you being on your side, both of our worlds combine quite a bit. But I almost think you can't separate out the psychology from habit change and forming new habits and making a change in your life. I mean, what do you think about that?
Most definitely because, it depends a lot on a person's value system, their, beliefs that they have too, as well as, being a bit in the eating disorder world. I recently was learning, intent really matters.
Mm.
You could have Bob over here running 1 mile, and then you could have Stacy over here running 1 mile. But if Bob's doing it for stress relief, to get some fresh air, to get his body moving, that's great. But if Stacy's doing it over here because she feels a lot of stress about controlling her body and that she has to earn her calories, that's going to impact their quality of life. So exactly what you're saying, exactly that. You can't really separate the psychology between these things.
yeah, that's it. Do you find it harder? I would say, how do I word this? Like, I feel like I know quite a few women who have always been like really struggled with like disordered eating per se. Do you find it's usually in women or men with the disorder? Because like just from my experience alone, it's just like my wife has struggled with the past, all of her girlfriends struggle with the past, and I'm like, I've never really had that issue of relationships with food. At least I don't think so. Maybe you could pick me apart and say I do, but I think in general I don't. Do you see it going to female or male, or is it 50-50 with you?
That's a great, great question. So there are populations that are known for being at higher risk, and the female population at times, yeah, you do see that there's a higher prevalence. But they're also, one of my favorite topics is male mental health. A lot of men, we don't have the best data yet because they're not really encouraged to talk about these things. There's a stigma where people think that men don't experience eating disorders, and
Mhm.
so I'm so sorry, I forget the stats, but I believe like 1 out of 4 anorexia nervosa cases are men. But again, our data is quite skewed because men don't speak up much about it because they're shamed oftentimes,
Mhm.
as well as eating disorders do sometimes look different in men, as well as again that stigma that, oh, men can't experience eating disorders, which is completely false. They very much can.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. Um, that leads me to another question. Uh,
All right, Nikki, here's a question
you go
that's
ahead.
not serious for you. If and just to lighten it up a little bit, Cam is one of our coaches, right, on the team, Be Better. Now, would you say he has an eating disorder because all he eats is beef and rice? That's it.
And honey buns.
Oh,
Honey
and honey
buns.
buns. And
Honey
honey
buns
buns.
before he works out.
Yeah, and beef and rice. Is there a disorder for that, or is that normal? Or
Sounds like he likes some delicious food.
okay, all right, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that men's mental health thing about food is, I guess I've never really even thought about that. Because we get so, maybe I'm just so like goal driven based. Like my last meet, I'm like, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to get as heavy as I possibly can. Maybe some people might say that's a disorder. You have an issue because you're trying to eat so much. But I always say like, well, no, I have a goal. So I don't know if the goal differs. But then you also get into the bodybuilding side of the world where guys and girls, they'll diet for 16 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's almost like a relapse with food. If they don't do a proper reverse diet out of it, they'll like
Mhm.
relapse, and then they'll go from 190 stage weight, jacked, lean, whatever, and they'll blow up to like 230, 240 within like weeks. And I'm like, that's some kind of disorder, or there's no goal, so people just lose it. So I'm not sure which one it is exactly, but we see it very, very common.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, guys. Just, I guess we don't really I don't really talk about it. Just, I eat for
Well,
a purpose, like the goal that I'm doing, and then I change it based on summers and seasons. But I don't know.
I mean, I would say that women and nutrition has been a thing for as long as it could be a thing, in the sense that culturally, a lot of women have always been pressured to look and appear a certain way. And obviously, people understand the role that food plays in that. Even if they don't understand it well, they understand that there is a relationship there. And so, Nikki, this is always something that I remember in school. We would study some of the quote unquote like older exercise myths and nutrition myths. And there was I think it was Vogue magazine in the 60s had the wine diet. So I don't know if you ever heard of this one. This was printed in the magazine for women to follow. You wake up and you have 8 ounces of wine and a cigarette. I'm not making this up. For lunch, you have another 8 ounces of wine and another cigarette. And then for dinner, you have a piece of steak, 2 glasses, 8-ounce glasses of wine, and then 2 cigarettes. And that's the diet. So yeah, men, men, I think have, and again, men have never had, I think, the pressure that women have had. So I think my guess would be that a lot of men probably don't even truly understand that it is an issue if they're even doing it. Is because it's kind of the flip side of having the pressure is that now we're correcting to a good place where the role on women and nutrition and how they look and how they appear is starting to, I think, normalize and come back to a much healthier place. But I don't think we've seen that shift in men. We've seen it in some mental health things for men. We've seen it in suicide and some depression, some other things, but I don't think we've seen it for nutrition yet. What do you think, Nikki?
So yeah, what you're saying, there are a lot of unrealistic body standards, and then I do think at times women, we can feel it in a very, very strong way. But there also is reports where with men, for example, the typical ideal body type for men, reported in research articles, is to have a six pack, to have broad shoulders, to have defined pecs and everything. And so I've seen it before. Generally speaking, whenever I see guy friends or just male clients who struggle a little bit with relationship with food and body, it's usually they're trying to put on weight. It's usually they feel too skinny and lanky in their body, and then they really want to beat up their body sometimes too in the gym to go after more of that skinny waist, broad shoulders, six pack look and everything. And the point when it starts becoming kind of an issue is when it's starting to cause dysfunctionality in their daily functioning, as well as impacting their mental health, where they feel like they're not going to be loved if they're a certain size, they're unworthy, they're insecure of oneself simply because of, or not simply. A lot of times, eating disorders is also a coping mechanism skill of trying to gain back control too. So again, that's where intent really matters. Is it's great to have a goal. It's great to want to get a good workout in at the gym and get all of those good feelings and everything and get your muscle gains. But if it's coming from the wrong place and it's really becoming obsessive too, that's where it can become more of disordered eating and eating disorders.
Yeah, we'll see that in some clients like that'll sign up and they're really excited and they want to start, kicking ass and going, and they'll burn so hot for like 4 to 6 weeks and they're killing it. They're losing weight. I'm going to do 2 a days instead of 1 a day. And I'm like, gee, I don't know if I would do that. Like I think we're going a little too fast. And then like 6 weeks, they crash because they just try to go so hard, so heavy, try to just not even heavy, just so often that they just body just is like, no, I can't do it anymore. So it's more of like sometimes just reining people in and be like, hey, listen, we've done this for a while. Like it's 1 step at a time, not 45 steps, because they're just going to trip and fall. And we see it a lot, unfortunately. Are there any common problems that you see with client to client when it comes to like a relationship with food? Or is it kind of all over the place?
The most common ones would be being very rigid with rules. That is something that can get dangerous when it comes to development of eating disorder or disordered eating, where a lot of people, I understand the thought process. We want to have something, we want to be confident that something's good and something's bad. But in life, there's a lot of gray areas. And so it's having to teach people and educate people, okay, there's no good or bad food out there. It's more, what does your body need in that moment? What's the balance and everything? It's the dose that makes the poison kind of concept. But you see, every nutrient has its own balance that is considered healthy or unhealthy. And that depends on the individual oftentimes, if there's any medical conditions. The other thing would be the all or nothing mindset. We have a lot of people that fall into that. And then also, a lot of people just really value their health. And sometimes they can be a little misdirected, but I don't blame them. We don't learn much about nutrition, right? And there's a lot of companies that will fearmonger over very, very valid values. And then that adds a lot of confusion and fear where people don't know what to do. And so then that can start some issues with relationship with food, body, and movement, as well as what Jacob was saying, a lot of unrealistic body standards and social pressures.
Hmm. It's funny that you say that, like this is good, this is bad mentality, and where that comes from. Like I remember my daughter came in from school like 6 months ago. She's like, "You can't eat that. That's a bad food." And I'm like, where did you learn that? Because like we have like, yeah, do we have fruit and like healthy, like the quote unquote the healthy food, and then we have like more processed snacks. Like we have a mixture of both in the house. Where I'd say somewhat normal. But I'm like, there's no, like, it's not a bad food. I go, you just can't have 10 bags of these, but you can't
Yeah.
have 10 pounds of meat either. Like it's like, I'm
Mhm.
like, so I don't know what they're at an elementary level, if unless you heard it from a friend, like at the lunch table. But I'm like, there's like, I doubt there's a lot of education. I know I've seen some stuff come back of like, but I don't know if it was a good or bad chart. I can't remember. But I remember we tried to teach them,
Mm.
like, this is energy. This gives you very little energy because you're going to burn it really fast. So like, yeah, if you eat that, let's call it, what's those things? Those frosted, not a popsicle. Like I'm saying pretzel.
Honey buns.
No, not a honey bun. A Pop Tart. The Pop Tarts. I'm like, yeah, you can have that, but you're only gonna have energy to ride your bike for 20 minutes. But
Mhm.
if you eat this potato or this full meal, you're gonna have energy to ride your bike for an hour. So we try to break it down to like an energy standpoint. And I think that kind of just put a light bulb in my head of like, man, I wish we could get you, or maybe you have, like, you need to talk to, like, I think like kids. And I know states probably have different stuff with schools and stuff, so it might be tough to navigate, but like I feel like there is a lot of good and bad that we see from the kids from going to elementary school. And it just like, it needs to be nipped in the butt now, because it's just going to be worse and worse habits, especially, for females as they get into the middle school, the high school age. Girls are mean. And then there's these body
Yeah.
images that the Kardashians put out on Instagram, and they think they have to fit into that. So I think I see it starting at the elementary level, which is kind of scary.
Most definitely, and with that word choice, there's a famous psychologist named Albert Ellis. He believes that there are words within language that add unnecessary and extra stress to us, and so if we eat something bad, it could potentially bring up the feelings of, "Oh, I did something bad. I what's it called? Didn't stick with my diet. I'm not smart. This is going to hurt me, and I failed." All of those emotions then can really impact a person's quality of life, as well as increase the risk of what's it called, binge eating, or
Mm-hmm.
even restricting, because
Yeah.
then they kind of want to punish themselves, and then that's a big cycle in itself.
Yeah. And I know I've met some people, like guys at work and stuff, and you could tell it's like, I feel like came from their childhood because food brought them comfort. And then it's
Mm,
been a problem for 45 years and it's never been dealt with. But typically with guys, most people will shy away from those issues and not really talk about them. But it's like, it's kind of sad to see, because you see someone, you're like, you're 100 pounds overweight. You've been this way for 15 years. Like, your heart eventually is going to be like, hey, I was supposed to be pumping a body at 220, not 320. And it's just going to
mhm,
stop. Like my brother's
mhm,
a surgeon in Chicago, and he talks about this stuff because he gets on me when I start gaining weight. He's like, your heart's only supposed to push blood for like 190-pound dude, Tom. Now you're 230. What do you think that heart's going to do eventually? I'm like, all right, I'll back off. Like, it's just temporary. But yeah, it's hard to, to break those habits, because it's not like a diet will fix it. It's like, it's deeper than that. It's the brain. It's the comfort food. It's what do you call it? Like relief from stress. So it's kind of,
mhm,
it's sad to see, and it's tough. And I've tried helping them. It's just like, I can't, there's not much you could do.
Well, tell them
mhm.
to call Nikki.
I know I had one of them in the dad challenge, but I don't think he signed up. That dad challenge, it was like optional, and I don't think he signed up, unfortunately. But is there a best diet?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It depends on what's being valued. It depends on what that person is looking for too, because I kind of see diets in three stages, generally speaking. You could be in a weight loss phase, a weight maintenance phase, or a weight gain phase. But I'm assuming you're talking about, like, is there a best diet for quality of life and health and everything? From what we know at the moment, it's going to be placing emphasis on the lean meats, fruits and vegetables, healthier fats, um, whole grains, and seafood. So one of the natural diets that follows a lot of those criteria is the Mediterranean
I
diet.
was just gonna say that. I was gonna say it
Yeah.
sounds like the Mediterranean diet. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but the Mediterranean diet, from what I know, in grad school, we were supposed to, or we had the option to go on a field trip, it just all of us didn't have the money to go to it, and it was to go to Italy. supposedly a lot of the Italian lifestyle in general, there's a lot of walking
Mhm.
involved too. So it's more of a lifestyle rather than a diet in itself. However, what you mentioned too earlier, I mean, having all those components is great, but it's also what is the diet that's going to be the easiest to stick with, plus the health values and everything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Interesting.
Nikki, I've never seen Tom so prepared. He has a whole list of questions that he wants to get through, but I'm going to keep messing them up because I have two important questions for you. One is actually important. One is just more observational. The observational question is, you're a sand volleyball player, right?
Yes, I play a lot of volleyball and all the elements.
Well, I just so you know, I was the intramural co-ed intramural sand volleyball champion one year at TCU. So we'll have to get together and play sometime. The
That'd be
second thing,
lovely.
I'm sure I'm not very good. I'm just tall, which is helpful. The second thing is, and I can jump because I have power. No, the second thing is, I have a lot of clients that I think, in my opinion, um, overemphasize nutrition to the point, and I'm not saying it's not important, I'm saying, but to the point where they avoid activity. They're like, I don't want to be physically active unless I'm quote unquote, on my diet or having my nutrition right. How do you feel about that approach?
So you're saying there's some people that they don't want to incorporate exercise yet until their diet's perfect?
Yeah, no, I see that a lot with people where they're like, if I don't have my nutrition right, and I'll exercise after that. And obviously I think it's a bad idea, but I want to hear your
Mhm.
thoughts.
My first thought would just be perhaps these people are struggling with where they feel like perhaps they're struggling with some perfectionism where they feel like they have to check this box off first before they can give themselves permission to go do something else or include something new, as well as maybe perhaps, not everybody loves exercise, which is a big bummer. That could also just be a way to avoid something that they don't want to do yet and kind of provide an excuse. But I would have to know the person, but those are the two things that would come to mind.
Yeah, I know one thing I hear a lot of from them is, there's this like old adage, right? Like abs are made in the kitchen. And so
Mm-hmm.
they feel like if they're not doing the nutrition right, then the physical activity is almost like minimalized. And I would argue that what I tell a lot of clients is, your physical activity is probably the most important thing when you talk about long-term health aspects. Now, clearly, you want both things, nutrition and exercise, to be, as optimal as they can be for that
Mm-hmm.
person. But I'm like, worst case scenario, you're eating like crap, but you're working out hard. You're probably going to have a better life. And there's some data. I remember this one study where they followed around people who were quote unquote the right weight but didn't exercise. Now, this isn't controlling for some sort of specific diet. So we don't know what their nutrition was, right? We just know they were
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote the correct weight, but they didn't exercise. And they had people who were classified as overweight, not obese, but they worked out at least 4 days a week. And the disease outcomes, the people who were the right body weight but didn't work out, they had a 3 times higher disease risk for things like diabetes, or heart diabetes, heart disease,
Yeah.
diabetes, high blood pressure, kind of some of those lifestyle related diseases compared to the people who were quote unquote overweight but did work out. Now, again,
Mhm.
that's not controlling necessarily for a specific diet, but I think the point is that, the two really work best together.
Yeah, but I've heard similar things. I can't think of a research article off the top of my head, but I do know what you're saying of, some people can be overweight and somewhat obese too, and still have wonderful health markers. And that kind of brings up then, I hate the term, but the term skinny fat.
Mm.
I remember actually learning that too in undergrad, where you could have somebody who's a normal BMI, but if they're not working out that much, that can have negative impacts on their health too, where an overweight person who's working out a lot could have better markers than them.
Have you ever made abs in the kitchen?
Me?
I mean, they say they're made in the kitchen. I've never made them there, but I didn't know if you had. No, I'm completely kidding. I will just say one. I'll just say one more thing, because and then I won't. I'll keep stop hogging the questions here. But just again, more of an observation. I used to train a lot of NFL players and
Mhm.
had a lot of linemen who were 320, 340, some guys 360, and I had one guy actually who was almost 370, and he ran a 4.940. And so it's like, yeah, body weight is important, but also there's a lot more factors. What is that body weight comprised of?
Mhm.
What kind of, like Tom was talking earlier about his heart. and, being able to pump for a certain weight. But if you're not controlling, but if you're training for, conditioning in that sense, then you're probably going to be a lot better off with that higher body weight. And anyway, the point is, I saw some very healthy athletes with a higher body weight. Now, to be fair, most of them would drop that weight as soon as they got done playing, or they go the opposite way, where they never really like to work out. They just like to play games. And so when it came down to it, and they stopped playing, they just gained a lot of body fat. But the point being is that I do think that, to me, if I had to pick between the two, and so you had to start with one, I would probably tell somebody to start exercising, because I just think it makes everything else go better long term in terms of your outcomes once the nutrition is back on track.
I think you know more about exercise physiology than I do. I would say perhaps nutrition, because the majority of our energy needs go towards keeping our body alive. So the basal metabolic rate, which is going towards keeping our organs functioning, keeping our immune system strong, rebuilding our bone, remaking our DNA and everything. And so that's all coming from calories. And I would also say, exercise is great, especially for people's body who can handle it. But you're going to need calories in order to support that.
Yeah, no, it's a really
So,
good point.
yeah.
Yeah.
What about the latest fad has been kind of, I mean, I don't know if it's the latest fad, but it's been brought a lot more light shown on the carnivore diet. My brother's
Mhm.
big on it. I tried it just to kind of appease
Mhm.
him, and I did do the whole, I mean, I stuck with it. I didn't do energy drinks. I did coffee. I did water. I did no creamer. I did just meat and eggs. What are your thoughts on it in general?
So yeah, it would go back to what is that person valuing in that moment. So the overall carnivore diet in itself, it's not the most ideal, but it's not the worst in regards to health, I would say. With the carnivore diet, you are going to be having more saturated fat, naturally so, which we know is associated with increased risk of cardiovascular diseases. On top of that, perhaps an increased risk of colorectal cancer. And then you're not having that much fiber. Fiber is really
Mhm.
important too, as well as for the microbiome. And then on top of that, protein isn't really used as a preferred energy source. And so what Jacob was saying, and we've all been saying, nutrition and fitness combined is wonderful. If someone's not having the proper energy sources to fuel their workouts, then they're not going to feel great. Their workouts aren't going to be as great too, that they're not going to get all of those benefits in. So that's those are my thoughts on the carnivore diet. But if someone has excessive adipose tissue, the carnivore diet may be helpful for them and may be a more
Mhm.
sustainable diet to help drop excessive adipose tissue.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, how were the bowel movements on carnivore?
Not the greatest. Very rough. It was rough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just felt like, I mean, obviously without carbohydrates, like in the gym, I was just like flat. I'm like, okay, I'm lean. I lost 20 pounds. I have abs, but I'm like, I feel like someone just like let the air out of my muscles, which I mean, they
Mhm.
kind of did because I had no
Yeah.
carbs for 6 weeks. But I was like, yeah, it's not for me. Like, I need to have a little fullness. So I mean, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I can't knock it if I don't try it, and I didn't know the research behind it. I go, I'll just try it. I'll just give it 6 weeks and see what happens. But yeah, not really for me. But the one thing I did get, I'll say, is I did give up some things. Like I gave up Monsters. I don't drink energy drinks anymore. I don't do creamer anymore. So I think there are some things that I took from it, and then I'll just apply to my quote unquote normal diet now.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting? The 16 on or 16 off, 8 on.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm glad that you defined it, because the first thing is there's not really a set definition for intermittent fasting. So that makes it difficult to figure out or to make your own conclusions on it. But the 16 on and then 8 off. When it comes to intermittent fasting, again, it would depend on what the values are and everything. When it comes to weight loss, that's usually what it's tied to.
Mhm.
It can be helpful, and I definitely would prescribe it to some of my clients if it's helpful for their lifestyle. The general gist with intermittent fasting in relationship to weight loss is that you create this window of when you're allowed to eat, and so it can help with putting someone in a caloric deficit. It's the same thing of spending money. If I tell Tom, "Hey, you can only spend money from 1 PM to 5 PM every single day," you're probably naturally gonna have a lower monthly bill because you're not
Mhm.
able to spend money when you first wake up and then like in the evenings. So that's the concept of intermittent fasting in some ways, and why it can help put someone in a caloric deficit. And the caloric deficit, if they have excessive adipose tissue, that's where some health benefits are going to come in.
Yeah, that's like the exact reason I do it. Like when I gain weight, I'm doing intermittent fast because I'm like, well, now I only have 8 hours to get all this food in. Like this is impractical. But whenever I
Mhm.
cut for like summer or just like lean out because I may have put on too much weight for powerlifting meet or something, the first thing I'll do is intermittent fast because then I'm like, because I'm like a snacker, right? It's like 9:30. Then I'm like,
Mhm.
all right, like I'll
Yep.
just see what's in there. But I'm like, oh shoot, I can't eat after 7 now because I started my meal at 11. So for me, like, and the balance of it is like, like you all say, like, okay, what's your situation? Like, it's easier for me to skip breakfast. I can get more work done in the morning, which kind of sounds bad. But I can work more, get more work done at work, stay busy till lunch, and then I'm like, okay, cool, now I can eat, and then it stops me from eating after dinner. So like for me, for
Yeah.
losing weight, it's like it's perfect because I can go without breakfast and I'm fine. And then after dinner, I'm like, I really probably don't need a bowl of cereal at 10 o'clock. You just don't. And I,
Mhm.
I found I was always doing that. And then I would always creep up like 10 pounds from like just, opening and staring at the light inside the refrigerator at 10 o'clock. I'm like, come on, Tom. Yeah, it helps me out for just closing that window like you're referring to.
Mhm.
Well, I'll say for me, and again, I've seen it work really well for people, and it's really interesting, Tom, that for you specifically, how it helps you with the, like you're saying, the timings to avoid certain things, etc. And Nikki, like I love the analogy of like, if you can only spend money during this time. My problem is if I could only spend money during this time, I would go and buy a car every day at that time. And it's the same thing with food. I can eat an enormous amount of food in a sitting and it doesn't even
Mhm.
bother me. It's like a superpower that I have.
Yep, that's a superpower.
Yeah. And so the problem for me when I tried it is I would be so effing hungry when it would finally come time that I would
Yeah.
probably eat the calories that I needed in a day plus some within that window. And so for me, what I've learned from that experience, because it's like Tom said earlier, there's things I think that you pick from anything, you kind of create something that's optimal for you over time. I think what I
Mhm.
found for me is I have to avoid putting myself in those situations where I'm uber hungry, because then I don't overeat. If I'm eating every 2-3 hours, and I know that doesn't work for everyone, but for me, if I'm doing that, especially with higher proteins and a little bit of healthier fats, obviously, then I just feel satiated when I go to when I go to eat, and I don't get to a point where I'm so hungry that I'm just like, give me the garden salsa and chips.
Most definitely. No, that is a very real con of intermittent fasting is some people, yeah, they feel like they can only eat within this certain time frame, depending on what it is, that they may be inclined to overeating. But then the other thing too, I love that you're talking about having eating about like two some hours all the throughout the day. If you want to get nitpicky, I call it shooting for the stars with my clients because I want to teach them, hey, here's like the right direction to go into. You don't always have to be perfect, but here's what you can strive towards. We do want consistent energy levels throughout the day. That's going to help with our workouts. We want to ideally time our carbs with our workouts if we want to shoot for the stars, as well as muscle protein synthesis. It looks like, if we have a certain protein bout every 3 to 4 hours, that's helpful for our muscle. And so intermittent fasting will, tamper with that in negative
Mhm.
ways. So again, it depends on what that person values and what you said, like, can you stick with this diet?
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard that. I have heard that with the muscles do like the 3 to 4 hours, and your intermittent fasting kind of puts a little bit of hinder on that. But I'm like, well, if I could sacrifice a little muscle and not gain 10 pounds of fat eating my kids' snacks every day, like that's probably a better sacrifice for me. Like if I was bodybuilding and I hired a coach or I had a super strict plan I got and I had to do, like that probably would be the 3 to 4 hour thing. It's not
Hmm.
very practical, obviously, with a busy lifestyle, but I think it would be the most practical for the goal at that time.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to wrap this up before our next podcast. So if someone contacts you, because we run 4 months um nutrition program with you, and then we want a
Hmm.
1 month. So if I sign up for a 1 month, or sorry, not a 1 month, a 1 hour consultation, what does that
Hmm.
look like? 1 hour with Nikki.
So 1 hour consultation, that's designed for people who already feel confident in having a foundation with their nutrition, or maybe again they're just looking for a little confidence and am I going in the right direction? But they already have the motivation, the confidence that they can what's it called?
Mm,
put the recommendations into action without having that much accountability. So
Yeah.
that's mainly designed for those people. And it does work well for those types of people who, again, feel confident in their foundation of nutrition skills, as well as they don't really need to be held accountable to go after whatever action they want to go after. The 4-month program, after being in a few companies and seeing how they design their own structure, that's how I made my own. Was for me, typically I can get people the results they're looking for around 3 months, where they also feel confident that they
Mm.
can keep up their skills on their own. Because that's something that I'm really passionate about is, hey, I'm more than happy to be your coach for years, but I want to see you be able to do this by yourself. I think that's the caring thing to do. And so the 4-month program allows people to build their nutrition skills together with somebody, and then they can get those reps in while having accountability, while having somebody be there in case they kind of stray off path, as well as if they want to keep advancing their nutrition skills. If they're doing well with all of the fundamental things, we can start shooting for the stars more and get a little bit more detail oriented together.
Right. So biggest difference is one-time consultation. I already kind of know what I'm doing. Can you double check that I'm heading the right direction? But I got a really good grasp on this. And then the 4-month
Mhm.
is, I don't know what I've been doing my entire life. Maybe the past 5 years I fell off. Like, can you just? I need you to build with me and walk me through this. And I think I would say, because I run like kind of all the square processing for us and the payroll,
Mhm.
and I would say I would probably go 70% of all nutrition sales for you are probably 4 months.
Yeah.
The one times are good for like the challenges to kind of try to get people motivated and get them on the right track. But I would say majority of people, and it's funny because with nutrition, it's like people will take that leap. Like, okay, I know I'm not doing this right. I know this is important. Let's do 4 months with Niki. And I think, and we've just gotten like the best reviews from clients. You just did a testimonial thing that we were posting periodically, and then you'll have people repeat because and they might go, hey, I
Mhm.
want a little bit more guidance, and they just go right back to you. So I think it's a true testament of what you've done for our company and for our clients, that it's so nice because we would get so many nutrition questions, and I'm like, I was a bodybuilder and I'm a powerlifter. Like, I don't know the science behind this. I know it works for Tom. Maybe it works for you.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm going to put you down the wrong path. But now I go, oh, nutrition question? Perfect. Let me get in contact with Niki because she can handle all this. And you've been a great asset to our team. So I really appreciate you working with us. You kind of came, as a referral from Gerald, and it just, it's worked so well ever since. So thanks for
Cool.
being a part of our team, Nick. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and
Of course.
I would just add to it for those who aren't familiar with the registered dietitian. I know Tom, you went over briefly at the beginning, but Nikki used a word earlier that I want to highlight. She said prescribe. That's what she's allowed to do. As a registered dietitian, you've spent your education, you've spent your time, you've spent a series of practical hours, quite a bit actually, working in a setting so that it allows you to prescribe nutrition. People can come to Tom and I and ask for advice, and like Tom said, we're happy to share some basic advice about things like same stuff you go read in the magazine. Well, ours is better than that, but I just mean like there's content out there that you can consume. But what Nikki does is so different than that. What she is actually educated and actually certified to do is to prescribe dieting. You start talking about not just losing weight, but your overall health, maybe some specific issues that you're dealing with. She's even spoken about some mental issues that fall into that category. Those are all things that she's been trained to deal with. So, it's never selling. We said that about our company a lot. We never want to sell anything because we want it to be a conscious decision and a partnership between our clients and us to want to be better. And if you're trying to get better on your nutrition, you need to hire someone, specifically Nikki, who has been trained and experienced to do that specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, buddy. Niki, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on the Be Better website as well as my Instagram. But yeah,
Yep, and
that's really
I'll
everything.
link it below, as well as, yeah, if you go to officialbebetterbrand.com, you'll see a giant thing that says nutrition. That is all for Niki. That's her thing. So if you're interested, you can DM us and we can get you in contact with Niki. I just tell people she's the best of the best, plain and simple.
I've
So,
never had a single client say anything negative. It's always positive
yep,
and helpful and progress, real tangible progress.
yep. So appreciate you, Niki. Thanks for being you.
Of course. Thank you guys. Thank you
All right.
for letting me join.
Thanks, Niki.
See ya.
See ya. She's super well spoken.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why, like, that's part of the reason I think why we hired her is when we got her on, I was like, oh man, she could talk like she's like a really smart person because she's so smart. Like she's so educated and she breaks these things down so much better than like we ever could. I'm like, oh, perfect. Like you're in. We got to wrap this podcast up though, because we have people about to be waiting outside for a next show. So thank you, Jacob, for joining me. Kind of short notice, kind of back and forth on the times and stuff. Thanks to Niki for hopping on. If you guys have any nutrition questions, you can DM us. And we will get you in contact with Niki. She's also at Niki_the_RD on Instagram. She like we said, she handles all of our clients. She does a lot of the challenges, and she is a huge asset to our team. So if you're serious about getting nutrition right this year, you might want to start with Niki. Be better.